Hello and welcome to this special edition of To The Point. Our guest this week is Union Minister for Law and Justice, Salman Khurshid. Thank you, sir, for joining us on Rajya Sabha Television. I'd like to start with the past 2 weeks. The UPA government seems to have found its resolve suddenly in the past 2 weeks. First came the diesel hike, then the twin decision on FDI in aviation and multi-brand retail. Critics who'd been criticizing the Prime Minister, calling him all sorts of unkind, unflattering names, have been sort of stunned into silence. What's changed?
Well, to tell you the truth, nothing has changed. We knew what is good for the country. We had a plan, but you have to factor in a lot of things. If you have a concern about keeping a coalition together, if you have a concern about timing vis-a-vis what is happening in the country or happening across the globe, and people become impatient because you're trying to be careful and cautious and sensible and rational, you just have to take it and wait for the moment. So I think what is important is not that we've done anything under pressure. We've certainly factored in issues that could raise the pressure on the economy. But I don't see that as doing something which we wouldn't have wanted to do in terms of our long-term plans, short-term plans. And I'm very glad that people have at least seen a positive element in what we've done, but there's a lot of still hard work to be done in the months and years to come, which we will do.
And you're talking about, of course, the second set of so-called reforms. The FDI in aviation and in multi-brand retail is not something that is new to the government. It's been pondering over it for a very long time, and these were executive decisions, didn't really need legislative approval, parliamentary approval. Some critics have also said that if the Prime Minister and his core team wanted, they could have pushed it 3 months back, 4 months back. Why the wait? Why now?
Well, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis before the UP elections. Who would have, from UP, would have stood by us, BSP or Samajwadi Party? They very clearly had a priority, which was to fight that election, and they weren't going to concede any space to us before the election. Now that the elections are through and whatever had to happen has happened, there's a 5-year run up to the next election, or certainly a 2-year run up to the parliamentary elections. And I think there is a greater possibility for them to be accommodative, even if they're not in entire agreement with everything that we are doing, but there are overlaps which can be emphasized. And I think that's what has happened, that the overlaps have been emphasized and differences have been put on a back burner. Now that's the kind of calculation that goes into a timing of a decision. We couldn't have, within weeks or months of having come into an alliance with the Trinamool Congress, said to them, well, sorry, we can't live together, and this is not a relationship that will last. And that would have given the impression that we are not prepared to accommodate alliance partners, that we are not prepared to be accommodated.
Would have given a wrong signal to allies.
I think you just have to weigh pros and cons, do a cost-benefit analysis, look at the totality of circumstances, and then take a decision. But the principal decision is that we need to reform the economy, that we need to unleash the potential which is locked in our economy, give people a chance, but at the same time, do it not in order just to make money for the country, but to ensure that we have the funds available for the outreach programs, which I think the world acknowledges are most outreach programs. Wonderful outreach programs to the common person.
The opposition has time and again said that this decision, especially in multi-brand retail, FDI and multi-brand retail, will destroy small traders in the unorganized sector, kirana walas, mom and pop stores. Would you like to respond to that charge?
See, I don't know how true that is. There are people who say that in the UK this happened, but the Industrial Revolution also changed things in UK. I mean, if you read Oliver Twist, that's not an argument for not having had the Industrial Revolution in the first place. But even if it's true in the UK, that it will also be true in an economy like India, I think that's a little bit far-fetched. And even if it were true in India, is it true that along with this will come benefits downstream to the ordinary farmer, to the ordinary person, to the person who doesn't even have land but is just a landless labor? would they be affected? Will they get some benefits? Will they get some advantages? What about the new jobs for young people? What about better quality of food available? What about absorbing the 30% losses that we have, transmission losses that we have because there are no cold chains, etc. So 30% horticulture losses get unleashed back into the economy. What is the impact of that on the ordinary person? A lot of these things have to be factored in, and to just make ex cathedra announcements, this will work, this will not work. I'm sorry, that's not the way human beings
There's
have
also
to
an
endeavor.
economic argument here. I was speaking to some senior left leaders the other day, and they pretty much say the same thing on FDI and multi-brand, saying it will destroy the unorganized sector. Is there an economic counter argument that you would like to give? You mentioned superstores coming in, getting technologies for cold storage, of course, creating jobs as well. But is there an economic counter argument? I remember Kaushik Basu was the finance ministry's chief economic advisor, and he said fighting inflation, the best way to fight inflation is to get FDI and multi-brand retail.
Well, if all economists could agree, then there would be no problem in the world. I mean, why do we have recession in the world when you have Nobel Prize winners strung all across the world? Why did we have the first Great Depression? Why did we have recession in recent years, etc.? Why would banks fail? They have the best minds in banking. Then why would Lehman Brothers fail? Similarly, as far as the West is the left is concerned, no matter what you do by way of free market economy, and our free market economy, as you know, has always been a mixed economy. We've never been extreme free market. In fact, I don't know if anywhere in the world except one or two countries there is now a complete free market available. Look at banking in the US now, for instance. There's regulation of banking that could easily put that into a kind of a mixed economy model. But given that we have a mixed economy model and that the left disagrees with the kind of mix that we are involved in, then they will disagree with what we are doing. So the proof of the pudding is in eating. Let us do something, let us perform. If it doesn't work, people will reject us, and then you can bring in your model and try and work that model.
So you're saying just give it time?
You have to give time, you have to give policies time, and there are lots of things I could point out to what has happened in Bengal, for instance, with left policies. Why did Mamata Banerjee win? Because left policies were rejected by the people of Bengal. But it doesn't mean that that's the last word that people of Bengal will speak on left policies. Maybe there were some things that were good, some things that were unacceptable. So now we are in power here, we control administration, we are giving out a model, and we are giving out a model because nobody has told us what the alternative is. Is the left telling us there is an alternative available to this? Shall we fold up Narega? Shall we fold up food security? Shall we fold up NHRM? Shall we fold up Indra Awas Yojana? Simply because we want to accept what the left is saying, that you shouldn't have FDI in retail. Now, if FDI in retail will permit us for an outreach program which is as expansive and as dramatic as we have, then sorry, we believe the left is wrong.
I want to talk a little more about the opposition and why the opposition is opposing, but that's after the short break. More with Salman Khurshid, the Union Minister for Law and Justice, after this small breather. Welcome back to the Point. Sir, there seems to be this feeling, not just in the capital but across the country in some circles, that the opposition parties seem to be opposing all reform, even when there aren't ideological differences. Your cabinet colleague, Mr. Anand Sharma, said that he is in possession of the note where the NDA had approved 100% FDI in single brand retail. The BJP is not really opposed to FDI, but why the opposition then?
You would ask them this. See, I think that opposition has an entitlement to somehow displace the government at a proper time and present themselves as an alternative. But you cannot change thinking because you want to present yourself as an alternative. Your thinking must be the alternative. Now, if the BJP has a model for the market and has a model for the supply side which is different from ours, they should present that to the country. They can't just hope to win on slogans alone. This is not a time in which slogans can win you elections without there being some substance behind those slogans. So let's see the substance. They have not shown any substance. I don't even want to go into arguments about what they said in the past, what they said in their manifesto, because people have a right to change. But if they have changed, they should come clean, say we've changed, this is the principle we believe in, this is the substance that we will provide, and this is how different it is from what the Congress is doing.
The Prime Minister's address to the nation the other day, there seems to be, in the tone of the Prime Minister's voice, there was this renewed determination to follow through on reforms. You, of course, also have, in several reports in the media, said that there will be another set of reforms coming in. There has been talk of reforms, FDI in the pharma sector, there is the pension reform, there is insurance reforms. But those reforms require parliamentary approval, like the pension and the insurance reforms. How do you how does the government plan to go ahead with building consensus when legislative decisions like FDI and multi-brand created a furor or even broke your coalition?
See, let's not make reform as a one single point for us. It's a spectrum of legislations that we are interested in. One is that will reform the financial sector and of course the fiscal side of the economy, and the other one is what will provide a legal framework for an outreach program which has not been heard of anywhere in the world, such as the food security program, also indeed the program for land acquisition, which will be completely different from anything that we've known in the past. Now this is possible only if we have legislative support in Parliament. And we think that there is enough legislative support in Parliament on each of these, given that land acquisition, for instance, is doing what Mamata Banerjee did in Singur, and she can't therefore be opposing it. I can't see any party opposing food security. I can't see most parties opposing, for instance, a constitutional amendment on promotions in reservations in promotions. Now, there will be area of agreement on many of these legislations, and that area of agreement hopefully will allow us to get them passed. There will be disagreements as well, and there will be people who will opt out and will sign caveats on what we are doing, but I think that's part of democracy and we should give them respect for it. We should give them a hearing, but ultimately it's the principle by which you stand and to which you are committed that must go through.
The Direct Taxes Code and the GST, the Goods and Services Tax, two of the most path-breaking tax reforms the country has ever seen. They've been stuck in limbo for a while now. GST has no consensus among states. TTC has been pushed by over 2 years now, and the date is now next year. How do you plan to build consensus on these two tax reforms, especially when the states don't agree?
The new Finance Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, is, I think, immediately concerned about ensuring that we are able to arrest the fiscal deficit, and also that we don't allow inflation to start running away once again. So those two important things that he's looking at, and immediately after he's done that, I'm sure he would want to turn his attention to both these legislations, which are far-reaching, and then start the work of consensus building again.
Right. On another issue that allies have had a problem with the UPA government, especially they've been accused of bulldozing decisions without consulting allies. Many people also believe that the government failed to create consensus on issues where there could have been some convergence of
ideas. You can't be saying that the government did nothing for 2 years and also say that you've been bulldozing issues. Now both can't be true. Now I think that we've shown a lot of accommodation and patience to the extent of ourselves beginning to believe that we are probably now doing the wrong thing by not taking decisions, and therefore we said now is the time to take decisions. We did try very hard to build consensus, and consensus has emerged on other things, but unfortunately it hasn't emerged on some of these things, and we don't know why. We can say that there is an understandable reason why there is no consensus in reservations in promotions, because we do know that there is a strong support for what the BSP has sought. There is a very strong support for the same idea within our own party. Mr. Punya and his colleagues have been pushing it very hard, and we are committed to doing this. At the same time, there is a very strong element in the Samajwadi Party that opposes it. Now, if the Samajwadi Party opposes it because fundamentally it eats into their constituency, we're not going to be able to convince them, except that you can work on accommodation and softening of a program that will be a little more flexible than is acceptable in the normal course to a party. Similarly, with some of our other friends, from time to time there have been an issue on which they say no compromise at all. And so we talk, and if there's no compromise, then we have to look for an alternative or an option. Either you drop it or you find a separate formulation and a modified version in which others will be supportive.
Coalition politics is very different. Everyone knows that. It's very difficult to actually go ahead with all your allies on board. Has it been very difficult, especially UPA 2, with allies playing truant every now and then?
Well, UPA 1 was difficult as well. You know that it came to a break point with the civil nuclear agreement with the US, and that was difficult as well. There were some matters in which UPA 1 was easier than UPA 2, and some matters in which UPA 2 has been easier than UPA 1. And we of course have the goodwill of UPA 1. We also have the experience of UPA 1. And we also have the pitfalls and the red flags of UPA 1. And in view of that, I would believe that we haven't done too badly. Of course, we've had a little bit of rocking of the boat caused by matters that we would have liked to avoid. They happen. We still don't know what the consequences will be in terms of law. There are matters which are in court, and courts will have to finally take a call and decide what is the level of responsibility or culpability, and therefore the sanctions that need to be imposed. But once we weed that thing out of our system and we get on with what we are really supposed to do, which is to ensure that this country gets back on a high trajectory of growth, I think we'll have a pretty good performance to submit to the country in 2014.
Hold that thought. We'll come back after the break, and I want to talk about how allegation of corruption cases and scandals have marred this government. More with Salman Khurshid after this small break. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television. We are back with Salman Khurshid. Sir, there have been corruption scandals that have plagued the government over the past 2-3 years, starting with the 2G scam and then a couple of others. There are so many charges of corruption against so many UPA ministers itself. How do you respond to charges that this government is deeply corrupt?
They're charges, right? They're not judgments, and charges are charges and judgments are judgments. But even if there are charges, these are not just charges being thrown at us in the streets. There are obviously charges that have gone to the level of investigation, and after investigation of charges actually being given to courts to examine further or scrutinize, or even for that matter to put on trial. And we think that it's, yes, of course it is an unfortunate thing that this should have happened, but it's nowhere near the scale on which people are trying to take us to the cleaners for. Yes, some things have gone wrong. To what extent have they gone wrong? What is the value of the wrong done? The extent of wrong done, I think, is being exaggerated too much. There are also issues of culpability, responsibility, proportionality. I think we must allow the courts to finally pronounce on this before we condemn the entire UPA. But let's also accept that at least we have a system for which we can be proud, that even the most powerful people can be made to account for what they have done. And that's what we have seen both in the 2G matter and we will see in the coal matter. But the fundamental decision is not what we are conceding is wrong. The fundamental decision about policy, that we are not looking for revenue generation in some fields, we are looking for a facility to be given, an affordable facility to be given to the common citizen. Now that fundamental thing is something on which we haven't conceded defeat, and we will not till such time as the Supreme Court gives us a clear verdict in the presidential reference, where this whole issue of what is being said by a lot of our opponents, whether it is morally, politically and legally justified or not, the courts will indicate.
But it must become very difficult as a government, as ministers, as cabinet ministers, to actually govern, and governance takes a backseat when you're firefighting the media and the opposition charges of corruption. It does become difficult as a government, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but then, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I hope that at the end of it all, you will see that despite the bad weather that has hit us, our flight will not be affected, and we will take the people of India safely to the destination and then land there at the destination as safely as we can.
Mr. Khurshid, there's also a feeling that the UPA, especially the UPA-2 government, has failed to communicate properly the achievements that it has actually made, or whatever it's achieved in the positive sense during this UPA-2 tenure. Do you think there is a miscommunication from the government side?
Well, I will concede one thing to you, that we've not learnt fast enough how to deal with a very aggressive, hostile new media, and not the traditional media. We are capable, and I think we've done reasonably well with the traditional media, the print media to begin with, electronic a little less. But when you come to the new media that we've seen now, civil society combining with new media, that's something on which I think we've been slow learners. But we are picking it up pretty fast, and I think, yes, this is something we flagged for ourselves. Two things. One is the good things that we are doing should be better advertised and known and better disseminated. The other thing is that the hostile things people are doing to us, we should be able to ward off. Now, the hostility is something that you need to be able to get rid of before you start talking about the good parts of your story. Now, I think in a modern democracy, storytelling is a very important art, and some of us have it, some of us don't have it. We've got to learn the storytelling part, and I think over the next few months you will see not only have we learnt lessons, but that some of us are training ourselves to ensure that we tell the stories that people believe, that people deserve, and that people should be hearing.
Would you like to elaborate on that? Would you like to remain cryptic about it?
No. I mean, see, when Colgate, so-called Colgate happened, for the first 2 days, it seemed that we will all just curl up and disappear and be on the defensive. But then we panned ourselves out into the country, and we went from city to city, and we went from state headquarters to state headquarters. All the ministers of the GOM, other younger ministers joined us. We went out along with party leaders. We went out and we spoke about the truth about the coal issue, and I believe that it turned significantly. It turned so much that people began asking our opponents some very, very, very discomforting questions. And I think that changed the nature of debate. But of course, as I said, it's not just enough to fight the negativity, but you also have to project your positives. And then the Prime Minister's announcement, first the Prime Minister's indication back to animal spirits, and then the Prime Minister's announcement actually came when we had created space for positivity. And so it's a dual thing. Let's fight the negatives, let's project the positives, and then democracy will give us the rewards we deserve.
Mr. Khurshid, looking forward now, there are two important state elections coming up, one in Himachal, one in Gujarat. Gujarat has been under BJP rule ever since Mr. Modi came into power. Do you see any chance of Congress doing better in these two state elections? What could be the strategy of the government?
Well, I see Gujarat is a very, very, very complicated state, and we want to move in Gujarat very carefully. Even in the past, we have felt that we've found a breakthrough point in Gujarat, and then it's turned around against us. We are not actual complete losers in Gujarat. I mean, we are only 10 points behind the BJP in Gujarat. They are 50, we are 40. So it's a very minor twist and a turnaround that can change fortunes of Gujarat completely. And a lot of the things that were being assumed about Gujarat are now being exposed as being patently false. And a lot of things that were being suggested were false by the Gujarat government and Gujarat leadership are now being proved in courts to be true. And I think that the picture of Gujarat is now beginning to change. It may be a very slow process, but it's beginning to change. So I wouldn't be surprised by some results that nobody could have imagined in Gujarat. But I don't think we should jump to any conclusion. There's a lot of hard work to be done, very careful fine-tuning of the campaign, because anything that you say explicitly is often used against you. So how much we have to be implicit, how much we have to be explicit, what is the pitch that we have to give in Gujarat, I think all that is being worked on, and we wouldn't really want to declare and disclose that in
carefully
advance.
calibrated approach. Right. Also 2014 elections, very important ones for the UPA. You've had two successful, some would say the second term was less successful than the first one. But do you think that in 2014 the Congress could go all alone? Do you think it has the capacity or the support or the mandate of the people in India right now at this point in time to go all the way alone?
I think everyone now, for the present, believes that every party that it's difficult to hope to get a clear majority at the center. That's our understanding, and that's also the BJP's understanding. The kind of alliance, three-pole alliance that you need to ensure the number of seats that are required to form a government, I think that's something that one needs to work on. And obviously, it depends also on what is the alliance that is available to you. You can't just wish an alliance and expect it to happen. Now, all this between now and 2014 can change dramatically from week to week and from month to month. And I think our leadership will do the utmost that is necessary. We said in Simla, when we first decided to go into alliance politics, is that we'll go into alliance politics not with the intention of permanently being in alliance politics, but with the intention of ensuring that we remain enough in control to be able one day to get this country to endorse us fully with a popular majority government. Right. And I think that target will remain. And frankly, that target can only be a target of two parties in the country today, the Congress party and the BJP. The ground reality today, yes, of course, I concede the ground reality is that we need to work towards this only with an honest alliance and hope that everybody can truly come into an honest alliance and give to this country a good, liberal, progressive government, right, which is what we've tried to do in the last two alliances.
Mr. Khurshid, my last question, and your answer can be a one-line answer if you want. Is the Congress party going to project a prime ministerial candidate in 2014?
See, this is an answer that will come in an appropriate stage from the Congress president. I don't think anybody else can give you this answer. But certainly I'll tell you one thing, that we have the great advantage of having in our ranks and leading our ranks from the front a young man who I believe carries a lot of history, a lot of determination, a lot of courage, and a lot of hope on his young shoulders, and that young man is Mr. Rahul Gandhi.
I think that's answered enough. Thank you so much, Mr. Khurshid, for talking to Rajya Sabha Television. That was Salman Khurshid, Union Minister for Law and Justice. Thank you for watching To The Point. Till next week, goodbye.